Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here for the first time, welcome. My name is Carolyn, and today I'm doing a Q&A. This is the first time I've ever done that. On a few of my previous videos, I asked that if you had any questions that you want me to answer about myself personally, or just about reading, the study of literature, study of history, things of that sort, that you could leave those comments on those videos, and a number of you did, so thank you for those questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer them today as briefly and concisely as possible, because most of these questions are very open-ended, where you could talk for hours on some of them. So the first question I want to answer is, what are some essential books for beginners who want to explore literature deeply and feed their curiosity? So there are a few books I want to recommend that answer the question, what even is literature and how do I read it well? The first one is How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler and Charles Van Doren. This is a very systematic, technical sort of approach to this question. The other one I want to recommend is Recovering the Lost Art of Reading, A Quest for the True, the Good, and the Beautiful by Leland Ryken and Glenda Faye Matthews. This is one of my favorite nonfiction books about literature and about reading, and it really opened my mind to why we read, how should we read, what are different ways to read, different types of literature, all these things. So I highly recommend both of these nonfiction books. In terms of classics for beginners, if you're new to classic literature and you don't know where to start, I would recommend Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, the Anne of Green Gables series by Lucy Maud Montgomery, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. These are just some of my favorite classic books, but some that I think are more accessible than, say, The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky or Les Mis or something like that. So any of these titles are a good place to start. Okay, I received another question on guidance for first years starting literature or history degrees. Okay, it's been a while since I was a first year, but I think focus on the skills. So really focus on learning to read and write well, learning to interpret literature, learning to craft arguments. If you're doing a history degree, understand what primary source analysis looks like and how to analyze primary sources. Build your mental historical timeline. Understand, the concepts of cause and effect. I think that skills are most important when you're starting a degree. They're just going to set you up for success in the rest of your degree and just make your life easier going forward, and they'll help you to learn better and to produce better work. And skills can start now. Like if you haven't started your degree, you're in high school or something like that, you can start to think about these things, start to work on these skills. Another piece of advice I have is just strive for excellence and really prioritize your studies. I mean, you're here for a reason, and it's not just to get a piece of paper, a degree, it's to learn well. So take your time, don't rush. Really just prioritize your studies and your intellectual life. You can also take time here and there to refresh your soul and mind, social activities, extracurriculars and stuff. But I would say don't let university, social life, and politics and all these things distract you from what you're really there to do. And connected to this, you need to love what you do. You need to study the things that you're studying, literature and history in this case, for the love of them. If that's your base, is just a love and genuine desire to know and to learn and to grow because you love, I think there's no way you won't enjoy and profit from your degree. If you're taking a literary history degree for some other reason, like family pressure, or you're trying to cultivate a specific image of yourself, I think going into it with the wrong motivations, whatever those might be, I think that's going to come around to get you at some point. I'd also say don't be afraid to ask for help. Make relationships with your professors. I was able to do that because I went to a smaller liberal arts university, and that was great. I really got to know some of my professors and could go to their office and have conversations with them at different times. I was able to be a faculty assistant, which was also a really great learning experience. And also just with like-minded students, find friends that really care about their studies and that are going to help you, and vice versa, you can help them just by talking about the things that you're learning in class, encouraging each other, editing each other's work, all these things. It's good to have people on your team so you don't feel like you're in it alone and you have no one to ask for help. I'd also say read widely outside your class content. If you're doing a lit degree, it's probably not the best if you're just doing your assigned reading and course reading. You should be reading outside of that as well, right? Reading should be a huge part of your life. I mean, actually do the readings. Do the readings that your professors are asking you to do for sure. But I think to get a wider understanding of the significance of things and to be able to make connections between books and movements and all these things, you should be reading even wider than, your narrow focus of study in your degree. degree. Okay, that was a lot of little things, and again, it's been a while since I was a first year, but I hope these will be helpful if that's you. Another question, how did I get connected with my classical school? Well, actually, one of my professors at the university was a founding member and a parent at the school, so I think it was through him that I first heard about the school. I had several conversations with him about it in his office. He really encouraged me to apply, and I bought into it right away because the classical model that he was showing me just really appealed to everything I stood for as a history and literature gal. History as the spine of the curriculum, emphasis on reading the great books, the academic rigor, the focus on the skills of learning, logic, rhetoric, grammar. When I first heard about all of this, and I said, where was this school when I was a kid? How did I not have this education? And so thinking about what I was going to do with my history degree, I wasn't set on going into teaching, but when I heard about the classical school, I was like, that is a place where I would love to teach because the curriculum is just so rich. Anyways, after I graduated from university, it didn't work out the first year that I could teach at the school. There just wasn't any openings that I was interested in. So I did take sort of a year in between where I was working at a different school, and I was also working as a research assistant for my history prof who was writing a book. And then the following year, there was an opening at this classical school for an upper school humanities teacher. I think they actually reached out to me about it because I had sent them my resume the previous year. And so I got a phone call and an email about it, and I decided I'm going to go through this interview process, even though it was very intense and it included teaching high school students, which I had never done before. But I went through the process and I ended up with the job, and I have not for a single second ever regretted taking this job. It is just truly where I feel like God wants me to be, and my mind and my heart and my soul feel so enriched. Teaching the things that I'm teaching and working with the students that I get to work with and colleagues and school community is just absolutely fantastic. So I am very, 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 very blessed to be where I am. And every day I kind of have to pinch myself, like, how is this my job? How is this my life? There was a question about literary heroes who inspire me to write. And so I want to give you like my list of sort of unattainable heroes. These are writers who inspire me, but who I don't think I have a chance of ever coming close to in terms of genius and mastery. But it's still okay to have these very high, sort of idealistic, unachievable goals to strive for anyways. So these are Fyodor Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy, Victor Hugo, the Brontes, Thomas Hardy, C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, George MacDonald, Dante, John Milton. My more attainable heroes though, and again, these are really great writers. I'm not saying they're less, but somehow they feel to me more attainable. These are Ellen Montgomery, Marilyn Robinson, Louisa May Alcott maybe, Carolyn Weber. Yeah, these writers write the kinds of things that I want to write. Their style, the themes that come out in all their works. They're just writers after my own heart. They're, sentimental, thinking about home and heaven, family and faith and all these things. So I would say those are my literary heroes. The next question is, do my husband and I want to have kids? And the answer is yes, absolutely we do. We'd love to have a number of kids one day. We actually have like 6 names, first name and middle name, that we love and we talk about all the time. I mean, the idea of having 6 kids sounds insane. I cannot picture myself with 6 kids, but I do have 6 names that I love and would love to use and would have a hard time picking between, if that makes sense. That's really silly. But yeah, it's something that we talk about and think about a lot. My husband is a baby magnet. He is extremely good with kids and babies in particular. His family fostered newborns as he was growing up, so he just has a really special gift for them. I do not. I am not great with babies. Babies kind of scare me. I do, I guess, want babies one day. The question I think for us is when, and I really struggle with this specifically because I just feel so young and so inexperienced and not really maternal. I just have a hard time picturing myself as a mom or thinking that I'm mom material. Financially, we're not really there yet. It would be ideal to have a bigger house and not be still in the tiny house when we have kids. I'm also just finishing my master's and working a job I love and really just enjoying this stage of life right now. As much as I would like a baby, the idea of giving up my job is really, really hard. And knowing the level of sacrifice that it takes to be a mother, that's something that I'm sort of working through internally. Because, yeah, I just really prioritize my own inner life, my own intellect, intellectual life. I have, big ambitions and strong goals, and I want to achieve them. And I recognize that motherhood may stand in the way of these things to some degree. I know there are really cool mothers out there who, raise kids while also still having really rich intellectual lives and careers, and that's what I aspire to be. But you just don't know how it's gonna go. And I fear that motherhood would hit me like a truck, and I would be extremely overwhelmed and lost, and would really, really struggle to give up, all the time that I currently have for reading and writing and studying, and all the things that I love, and some of the relationships that I'm just starting to foster at my job, and these kinds of things. And so all that to say, yes, we do want to have a family, but we don't know exactly when that's going to happen, and ultimately it's not in our hands either, and it's something that we think about and we pray about, and I just pray that God will prepare my heart for that when the time comes, and that I will be able to be a good mother. Another question, what motivated me to study history and literature? Well, honestly, I've always been a reader, I've always been a writer, and I've always been interested in history. As a kid, I was constantly reading books, constantly writing stories. I have distinct memories of poring over some of the Osborne history books, especially the ancient history, ancient civilizations, Egyptian mummies, all these things really, really captivated my imagination. I wouldn't say that I got a great historical education though, up until high school, university. Grade 10 Canadian history, which is actually just a standard course that everyone in Canada has to take in grade 10, was actually a big turning point for me because I had a really great history teacher who really inspired me, and I excelled. I think I got 100% in that course because I was so into it. I just poured myself into all my assignments. I studied hard for every test. I hung on every word the teacher said when she was lecturing about the world wars and about Canadian society and all these things. That course just really, I latched onto that and it latched onto me. I remember the summer after writing a historical novel on Wattpad because I was living in, the 1930s, the 1940s in my head all the time. So yeah, I would say I really fell in love with history and literature in high school, and I did have some pretty great history and literature courses there. Things really expanded in university though, that really broadened my horizons, and I started to have that really strong timeline in my head and starting to make connections across disciplines and bring everything together. That happened mostly in university. It's still happening today. Honestly, my job as a classical history and literature teacher, I'm basically getting another university degree. I am studying and learning so hard for my job. It's fantastic. Every day I'm learning more about history, and I'm reading great books and learning more about them and their contexts and their impacts, and it's just incredible. I think the high point for me though, I think my intellectual life really took off sort of in my last years of university, and now this is my third year out of my undergrad, my second year doing my master, and I'm just looking forward to a lifetime of learning and studying and reading and writing. Okay, another question. What do I think about the future of theological education and seminary education? This is an interesting one because I honestly don't know too much about theological education or seminaries. I've never studied at one, but I am an evangelical Christian, and I do think that good theology is more important than ever. I believe that Jesus is the answer to life's deepest questions and toughest trials, and I believe that he offers peace and joy and hope and restoration to the world that nothing else does, and I think that people need to know about this. And the way that they can know about this is for the gospel to be preached to them in the fullness of truth and winsomely, and this requires sound theology and good theological training. So while I don't know much about the state of theological education throughout the world, I do recognize the importance of it, and I do know that there are great seminaries and theological institutions in the States and in Canada that are doing really great work, and I support their mission. Another question, if I had a time machine, what historical event or time period would I visit? That's kind of hard to say. I think it's nearly impossible to choose. I'd be interested in seeing life in Rome during the Pax Romana. I'd be interested in seeing the Viking Age, even though the Vikings terrify me. I'd love to see them in real life. Anglo-Saxon Britain, but also Celtic and Roman Britain. These fascinate me. The 13 colonies and even the new settlements in Canada. I think I'd probably feel most at home in the late 19th to early 20th centuries, Prince Edward Island circa 1900 when Anne was living there. That seems like a very familiar place. That feels a little bit like home to me for some reason. Also, I think the Netherlands during the Golden Age would be fantastic. I would love to see the Dutch masters at work. I would love to see the Dutch port cities booming. New Amsterdam, the original settlement that modern New York has developed out of. There's so many places and times I want to go to, so all of those, and probably more that I have somehow missed in my short reflection on this. thoughts on the intersection between history and literature. I mean, these subjects, disciplines, whatever you want to call them, are so interconnected. To read literature well, I believe that you need to know the historical context and the place and time in which the book was written. Lit history then is integral to understanding a book and author biographies and all these things. I do believe that history ought to be the spine of every subject because I think history underlies and influences everything, whether that's science, math, religion, philosophy. Everything that we have and know today came from somewhere, right? It came from the past. And so history is just behind everything, and I love how in the classical world that's really emphasized. In science class you're learning history of science, and in math class, and history is the spine for everything, and I think that's great as an educational system, but also just life in general. I think we all need historical knowledge to make sense of anything and everything around us. And I do think that an understanding of our world as it is today and where we come from is key to being a good human, and definitely an educated one. Classical literature is also, a window into historical worlds that we can't enter any other way, and I think that's really beautiful. These are windows into the past. When I approach reading a new book, what does my process look like? Honestly, if I am just reading, a classic that I haven't read before, a fiction book, I just read it. I just pick it up and read it. I don't really take notes. I'll have my commonplace book on hand if there's any quotes or lines that really stick out for me. But I want to just enjoy the book as it is and sort of discover it for myself and discover as I go. When I'm finished, that's when I might, journal about it or write notes or do some additional research or read reviews, get a secondary take on it perhaps, but not before I read it generally. If it's a nonfiction book, I will often just take notes from the get-go and have my notebook beside me and be taking notes chapter by chapter, do more of the marginalia marking, annotating as I go through. Because often with nonfiction, I have a specific learning outcome. I'm trying to learn something from this book, whether that's a skill, whether that's historical knowledge, a way of thinking about things, a philosophical system. I find notes really critical for that. What books have influenced my outlook on life? Okay, honestly, probably every book that I've ever read to some degree. I think the ones that have been most influential, though, are Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius, The Divine Comedy by Dante, Paradise Lost by Milton, the Bible, of course, The Brothers Karamazov. I love The Brothers Karamazov because Dostoevsky demonstrates the power of simple faith and true religion in the face of life's most difficult questions and in the face of atheistic nihilism. Les Mis does something similar, and I just really love books that ask hard questions and deal with hard questions and aren't afraid of dealing with them. Peter Pan has been really influential in my life. Just the power of childlike wonder and imagination. This does not have to be lost as one gets old, and I hope and pray that it doesn't get lost on me. Peter Pan's a reminder of the value of these things. Little Women and Anne of Green Gables, Jo March and Anne Shirley are both icons for me, as I know they are for many female readers and writers. Their attention to the simple pleasures, the little beauties, the richness of family and friendship and of home, the centrality of love in life. I really appreciate that. But these girls are also really clever, smart, ambitious. They desire to tell stories and to teach and to influence the world for good. I think that combination of, enjoying little, simple, wholesome things, like reading by the hearth with your family around you on Christmas Eve, but also being a citizen of the world, a citizen of home and a citizen of the world. I feel like these characters balance these things really well. They are both. And I think that is really a mark of a good life. Last question. How does one find people to start a republic of letters with? Honestly, this is still something that I'm struggling to figure out. I have met some pretty cool people online, through YouTube, through Substack, but most of my connections come from church. There are some pretty cool artists and scholars and writers within my church circles, also from university and from working in the classical education world. So for me right now, my workplace and also my place of worship, this is where I'm making connections with like-minded people, with writers and readers. And so I think that whatever your social circles look like, whatever institutions and places you are a part of, just keep your eyes out for those kindred spirits, and once you find them, don't let them go. Approach them, talk to them, get their number, start a group with them. Do not let them go. I'm generally not a person who really seeks relationships. I feel sort of content in the friendships that I do have in life. I'm not looking for more friends. It's not about the number for me. It's about the quality over the quantity. But when I meet someone who is so obviously a kindred spirit, I'm like, yeah, no, I need you in my life, and you're gonna be in my life, and I love you. And I make that connection happen, and it's worked out really great a number of times in my life, and generally people are receptive to it because they're a kindred spirit. They're also looking for you. They are also probably missing the type of connection that you're also missing. So just be on on the lookout, and when you find them, hold on to them. Alright, I think that's where I want to end this video. This Q&A was really fun. I enjoyed answering your questions. I feel like my responses to the questions relating to literature and academics were not as great and thorough as they could be because they are inexhaustive questions. I did my best with the time that I had and the experiences that I've had, so I hope that they were helpful for you. Thank you very much for being here. Please leave a like, please leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you again very soon.